Bore da, and thank you for joining me this morning. So I want to talk to you today about the choices we make as governments for the people we serve. We're in the midst of an unprecedented cost of living crisis and on the brink of a recession. And here in Wales, we've chosen to support people through this crisis by providing targeted help to those who need it most and by supporting everyone through programmes which put money back in their pockets. This is in stark contrast to the decisions taken by the UK government. It prioritised bankers' bonuses, the profits of energy companies, and of course, huge tax cuts for the rich. It also raised the prospects of big cuts to public spending, public services, and welfare benefits to balance their books. The Chancellor yesterday changed his mind about his decision to abolish the 45p income tax rate. But its inclusion in the mini-budget at the height of the cost of living crisis shows just where the UK government priorities lie. Supporting the rich at the expense of everyone else. A U-turn may have been announced, but the damage has already been done. The mini-budget has caused turmoil on the financial market, sending the pound plummeting and making mortgages more expensive. Interest rates and inflation are set to rise further. And it's likely the financial damage caused by this reckless giveaway will wipe out any benefits we all gain from the new energy measures which came into force on Sunday. I've repeatedly called on the UK government to step up and to step in to provide the support we all desperately need as we head into winter, to prioritise help for lower income households. Unfortunately, those calls have gone unanswered. That's why we focused our efforts on developing our own package of support. In this financial year alone, we will be spending 1.6 billion on targeted support and universal programmes which put money back in people's pockets. And this includes an extra 15 million for the Discretionary Assistance Fund, ensuring more people can access emergency financial support when they need it. A national fuel voucher and heat fund scheme for households on prepayment meters or not on mains gas. Almost 4 million to help reduce and tackle the causes of food poverty and to support community food organisations. And last week, we opened the second round of the Welsh Government Winter Fuel Support Scheme, which will provide some 400,000 households with a non-repayable £200 payment towards their energy bills. This winter, we've expanded the criteria to support more households across Wales. We've doubled the number of households eligible for the Winter Fuel Support Scheme. And this cash payment is on top of the support available from the UK government. But I do urge everyone to check their local authority's webpage for more information about how to claim the Winter Fuel Support payment. We've also heard alarming calls of scam callers claiming to be issuing payments on behalf of local authorities. So please be careful and ensure that your local authority webpage, that you access it for the correct information. Last week, the First Minister confirmed we'd set up a new Cabinet Cost of Living Committee, which will meet weekly. We'll work closely with local authorities, with social partners and the third sector as we continue to respond to this crisis. We'll be running a third Claim What's Yours campaign this autumn to ensure people are claiming all the benefits they're entitled to. And we'll be providing an extra £1 million to fund direct food support for food banks in Wales. This is in addition to the 500,000 we've already invested in this area. This funding will help to treat some of the symptoms of this cost of living crisis, but they will not and cannot attempt to solve the underlying causes. And to do that, we need to see concerted action from the UK government. But as I said at the start, this is about choices. We will continue to do all that we can with the limited resources we have, prioritising support for those who need it most, while continuing to help everyone through the universal programmes we provide, like universal free school meals and free prescriptions, which put money back into people's pockets. We will continue to take a fair and more equal approach to supporting people through this crisis. We've made our choice. I'm calling on the UK government today to think again, to prioritise those most in need instead of the richest, to introduce a lower price cap for lower income households, to ensure they are able to meet the cost of their energy needs now and in the future, to introduce a significant increase in the rebate paid through schemes such as the Warm Homes Discount and winter fuel schemes, additional funding to increase benefits in line with inflation to support low-income households, and a £25 per week uplift for universal credit and legacy benefits, to remove the benefit cap and the 2-child limit to support families and give children a better start in life. And these are all practical solutions which would ease the burden on households and, more importantly, prevent tens of thousands more people and children sliding into poverty. Diolch yn fawr, thank you. I'll now take questions from journalists, and I start with Dan Davis, BBC Wales.
Thanks, Minister. If you want to ease the burden on households, why haven't you frozen rents?
Well, clearly we are doing a lot in partnership with local authorities to help people who are renters, whether it's social or private rented sector. And I think it is important to recognise, in fact, over the last 2 years, that we've assisted local authorities, and it's part of the homelessness prevention strategy that we've got. We've given extra money to help them, for example, help people who are struggling with rent arrears. But also we must remember that, you know, there's lots of other ways in which we're supporting people who are renters, social or in the private rented sector. The private rented sector leasehold scheme, which has just been announced, rolling out to make sure that we can help people in the private rented sector. But also, I have to say, you know, in terms of our council tax reduction scheme, putting a lot more money into a council tax reduction scheme, which actually results with thousands of people not actually having to pay council tax at all. These are all the bills that people are faced with. But we are, the Minister for Climate Change is bringing forward a white paper to look at all of the issues concerning affordable rents in those sectors.
Perhaps you could tell us when that white paper would be available. But my second question is on the COVID inquiry. The bereaved families from Wales are asking for core participant status to properly scrutinise the Welsh Government. If they don't get that, will the Welsh Government reconsider having a Welsh inquiry?
Well, we are determined to ensure that our actions and decisions and those of other public services in Wales are fully and properly scrutinised. And that, of course, the UK-wide inquiry is best placed to oversee this very interconnected nature of the decisions that have been made across the 4 nations. Thank you, Dan. And I'll turn now to Caitlin Parr, LBC.
Thank you, Minister. You said that you've been repeatedly asking the UK government for help and that it's been going unanswered. Are you concerned about any sort of further ramifications of another Prime Minister that's come in that seems to be ignoring Wales?
Well, extremely concerned. I don't believe there has been a call to the First Minister yet by this Prime Minister. The First Minister recalled only last week in the chamber that he'd had calls from actually both predecessor Prime Ministers on the day that they were appointed, elected, Boris Johnson and Theresa May. No call. Perhaps he'll have a call from the next Prime Minister, but who might take this current Prime Minister's place. The situation is so serious in terms of the impact of policies in Wales. And can I just say again that Liz Truss today has refused to rule out real-term cuts in welfare benefits. Now, we're in the worst situation for welfare benefits for 50 years. And the poorest are going to lose out. The budget even remove, the U-turn. They're doing U-turns every day. So will we have a U-turn on the fact and just we've had a U-turn 45B, but we've also had a U-turn in terms of bringing forward that information for transparency. We have got to have clarity that benefit cuts are not ruled out by the Prime Minister. That is the most important thing for the most vulnerable people in Wales. And let's remember, public services, the messages from local government last week from Councillor Andrew Morgan, the leader, a real fear about public services because also those public services actually reach all universally, all their constituents and their people, not just education, housing, social services, everything that our local authorities do. So there's a real concern. Liz Truss has got to speak to our First Minister and engage with her. I'm certainly also asking to meet with ministers with my responsibilities. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Minister. And of course, we've all been hearing about people struggling between heating and eating through the cost of living crisis. But even with the measures that you've announced today, how worried are you about potentially approaching a point where people can't afford either?
Well, we're doing everything that we can to avoid that. So, I mean, one of the most important things for me as Minister for Social Justice is that I meet with the people who are actually providing those frontline services to hear from them, what is it that we need to do? That's why we went into partnership with the Fuel Foundation. Nothing like that exists in England. The Fuel Foundation actually gives vouchers for prepayment meters, some of the most vulnerable people in terms of their energy costs, but also really important for off-grid and in Wales, where obviously we've already been helping with discretionary assistance payments, but now with the heat fund from the Fuel Foundation. But, you know, last week I met in Cardiff and Cynhadledd at a meeting chaired by Jenny Rathbone with local providers, local churches, health visitors, Cardiff Council, to hear from them what it is like for them at the sharp end. They all want to help. And the key message I want to get over today is please publicise Claim What's Yours. People are entitled to money into their pockets and we will help them get that money. But 400,000 people in Wales are entitled to the next round of winter fuel, which I announced last Monday. So, you know, we have got to play our part to reach those who need it, those services most. Andy?
In the Bevan Foundation's most recent snapshot of poverty, there were significant gaps identified in terms of people's awareness of the various UK and Welsh government cost of living schemes that were available. Have you done any work as a government to look at how many people are actually failing to access the support that they're eligible for, and what are you doing to address that?
Well, this is where we need to reach out and get the message over to everybody at the sharp end. Frontline workers, I have to say, our food banks, our network of food banks are actually the places, sadly, where people who are very vulnerable, and that includes people in work now, where people who are very vulnerable go. So as food banks have now started operating now, they are a place in the community. So, you know, food banks have also got their links with Citizens Advice. So people are now coming in to sit alongside food banks, in food banks, to then provide advice on benefit take-up. You know, we did get 166,000 people took up the last winter fuel support scheme. We've got a target for 400,000 people on pension credit, carers allowance, child tax credit, disability benefits. All are going to be available for £200 into their account. So, you know, we're doing everything that we can. We're funding Single Advice Fund. It's the only one of its kind. All our Citizens Advice services and their partners. So yes, I mean, and it's crucial that we get the claim what's yours for cost of living. But actually, as Bevan, we're working with Bevan Foundation, all those trust at the sharp end. You know, that it's important that also we learn what else we can have take up. Pension credit is not, it's a UK government benefit. Not all our pensioners are taking up pension credit. Healthy Start vouchers, UK government, and Legal is pressing that campaign. But we were told by health visitors last week that actually it's quite complex applying for Healthy Start vouchers. But those help people with the youngest children and you know, at the start of childhood. So I've also called with the Minister, Scottish Government Minister and the Northern Ireland Executive Ministers. We've written this week to Chloe Smith and to say that we would like them to work with us on a UK-wide benefits take-up campaign. It's not just our campaign, it's theirs as well.
And just on that theme, are you worried that, you know, what you're offering in terms of cost of living is is too complex. I mean, if you look at what National Energy Action Cymru have said, that the problem can be that there are too many one-off discretionary payments, and that there needs to be a longer-term solution rather than a lot of one-off payments.
Well, you know, the longer term solution lies with the UK government in terms of benefits and their responsibility for benefits, and to make sure, I mean, the key point is that we're going to face a horrendous winter if we don't, anyway, but if we don't have that up rating in line with inflation, which was promised by Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson, you know, the scenario ahead is of huge concern. But, you know, we do need to make sure that we passport our benefits. That's what we've got, a charter now, a benefits charter, which Bevan Foundation have engaged with. We need to, all those on the front line are helping us with this. We need passport benefits, local government. I'm meeting local government on Thursday. All the leaders, we've got cost of living on the agenda. We've now got a cabinet committee. We're making sure that we do get those benefits up. Some of them can go straight into accounts. Local government is now playing a really important role, because when they've already got council tax accounts, the money can go straight in. The £150 cost of living payment earlier this year, that went straight into accounts. One of the issues we have to address is people who are not online. So digital access is crucially important, but also we have to help some of those get online, but also to help them with applications. These are things that we can do, Andy, to get this right, to get the money into people's pockets. But then, of course, it is going to be very important that people are getting those free school meals across all our primary schools, because that does mean, you know, that helps with the cost, that we've got free school meals going forward into the summer, into the school holidays as well. So, you know, we still stand by our free prescriptions, our free breakfasts. I mean, we are helping people with that kind of socially, a social wage support in many other areas. And that's universal services, which people don't have to apply for. So can I go to Alan Evans, Llanelli, on screen?
Thank you, Minister. Your partners in Plaid Cymru say you're dragging your heels and fiddling rather than taking urgent action to address the cost of living crisis. They also believe that independence is the cure for all Wales's ails. Are they right?
Well, I think the announcements that we made, the fact that the First Minister made a statement, the first day that we're back on tackling the cost of living crisis, was crucially important. It showed our government's commitment to tackling. I mean, obviously, this builds on all the work that we've been doing, and I've been doing as Minister for Social Justice. The 1.6 billion that he announced, I mean, we're actually responding to what people say they need. And I'm sure, I hope very much that Cynhadledd Online will help us with our Claim What's Yours campaign, because, you know, you have a role to play, or all media have a role to play in actually getting the information across. But I hope you also welcome the statement I've made today about further support to tackle food poverty, which I know is a big issue. And also the First Minister made an announcement about warm hubs. I mean, we already knew churches, chapels, mosques, community centres, local authorities, met them all in the last 2 weeks. They're already wanting to do this. So we're putting money into that, £1 million. But actually, these initiatives are based on what people tell us that they need to tackle the cost of living crisis. And that's our priority at the moment, Alan.
Thank you. The gap between the wage of a minister and a carer is significant. Welsh Labour promised to address inequality, yet we see so many hardworking people in Wales struggling to put food on the table. Would the minister agree that the gaps need adjusting, possibly with a reassessment of wages by local authorities, if we're to keep the quality and numbers of these essential workers, given the hardships they'll be suffering as a result of the cost of living crisis?
Well, of course, we have a commitment to fair work, working very closely with our social partners. Wales TUC, as part of our social partnership, developing as we move forward with legislation on social partnership. But I think it was in our manifesto, and we've delivered it. The real living wage for social care workers was a clear indication that we wanted to ensure that we did support our lowest paid and social care workers, who are so vital, as you say, in terms of what they did through the pandemic, but also they also have to face the cost of living crisis. So I think the fact that Julie Morgan, our Deputy Minister for Social Services, announced an extra £96 million to make extra payments, and you'll be aware of those, Alan, 10 million for local authorities to support domiciliary care workers. So, our local authorities are also doing everything that they can. We're very committed to working with the Real Living Wage Foundation. Many authorities, despite the pressures that they're all under, are working towards a real living wage. And of course, this is my job. I'm Minister for Social Justice, to tackle inequalities. And I have to say, I would like to also mention the fact that that's the basis of our Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan and the work that we're doing with our Disability Task Force. Thank you, Alan. I'll turn to Will Hayward.
Thanks, Minister. I'd like to just follow up Dan's question, please. Can you just explain why you haven't frozen rents? Because you could do this.
Well, this is obviously, I've already mentioned quite a few issues about what we're doing in terms of helping people who are renters. And it is about working with local authorities. I've mentioned the fact that we're giving an extra 6 million to local authorities for discretionary homelessness prevention and relief measures. Now, this can be used to help both social and private tenants, and it includes helping to pay rent arrears. I'll perhaps give a bit more detail about the leasing scheme for Wales. That's 30 million of funding over the next 5 years. It's going to improve access to longer term affordable housing in the private rented sector. So, obviously, this is about what are the sort of practical and operational ways we can help tenants. That's the reason for, the call. And obviously, we need to respond and explain what we're doing when anyone raises a question such as the rent freeze. But I think also this is what is already in train in terms of helping people. Now, I think there was a question from Dan about the white paper. I think the thing about the white paper is it is about trying to have new approaches to for affordable rents for local people on local incomes and a right to adequate housing. And actually that does form part of the cooperation agreement with Plaid Cymru.
Obviously, that's a lot of detail on what you are doing, but I just specifically, what is it about freezing rents that's putting you off that policy? Obviously, it's been adopted in Scotland with following calls from Scottish Labour. So what is it specifically about that policy is that you don't like? Well,
the Minister for Climate Change obviously is responsible for housing, and I've outlined some of the issues that some of the areas of work and policies that we're already taking forward. There are issues about a rent freeze in terms of what it does to the market. And also, I think it's very important that we actually did during the pandemic and up until March have a rent freeze in terms of social housing. We have to look at this in terms of, what is affordable, what are the best mechanisms in terms of supporting our tenants in the private rented sector and also in the social housing sector, and also did consult, basically. We are a government that consults with our providers, and I think that would be really important in terms of consulting with our registered social landlords, as well as the Private Rented Landlords Association. I don't know whether, in fact, in Scotland, they've got the leasing scheme that we've developed in Wales, which is actually quite pioneering in terms of longer term affordable housing. It's £30 million of funding. So I think, thank you. It's Tom.
Yes, Tom Magna-Carriswell Live. Good morning, Minister. Can I ask you about a fundamental nature of society type issue? As your ministerial portfolio covers armed forces and veterans affairs, to what extent do you believe that the passing of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II has restored wider respect for those who served their country and specifically given their lives in war?
Well, clearly we have a huge commitment to armed services and also to our veterans. It's actually the responsibility of my deputy, Hannah Blythen, and we do a great deal of work. We've got an armed services branch in the Welsh Government. But, you know, this is something which is also local authorities and the third sector, as you will know, Tom, take on a lot of interest and responsibility and also funding to support particularly those veterans and the armed services. But also many of us were involved as constituents in Armed Forces Day, and we will be, of course, engaging in remembrance events next month.
Thank you for that. Can I draw your attention to an issue that's recently come to our attention on Carers World Live? And I'd be interested in your first thoughts on this. On past Remembrance Sundays, the authorities have refused to stop the Sunday shopping traffic on the main road, feet from the War Memorial, for the 2-minute silence in the village of Troy Dubuque. Yet in the villages on either side, the traffic is stopped. Would you agree with me that this shows no respect for those who gave their lives for their country from that village?
Well, that's where local democracy is so important, isn't it? So that, you know, it's the local authority who's got that responsibility, the planning authority, and I'm sure councillors there will know that this is something that they should sort out. Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you.